Okay, so I want to answer a question that I have asked many times, and almost all of my friends have asked many times. Anyone who's on the path of soul evolution, of traversing this path into wholeness, of healing, whatever you want to call it, we all will hit this point where we are working on our core wounds. We all have our core wounds. I don't have the same core wounds as my best friend over here, but I will see the pattern repeat. Meaning, for me, it's been a lot of chronic illness and whatever, PTSD and all these different things, right? Terror, fear, okay? My other friend has a lot of stuff around loneliness and relationships. I don't have that one. So whatever your core wound is, why is it that it repeats over and over and over and over again, even when you've done the work? And when I say done the work, many of us who are on this path are working diligently with ourselves, with our inner child. We are working with mind, body, and spirit. We are working with trauma therapists. We are doing our EFT. We are doing our tapping. We are diving into the shadow. We are rewiring our brain patterns. We are doing neuroplasticity. And then it still shows up over and over and over again, right? And why is that? Some things we can transmute more quickly because they don't have as much of a charge in our life. But then there are some things that maybe like have that hold. For me, as the example is the chronic illness, okay? So for me, I'm like, how is it possible that I've done this much work? It's like 10,000 lifetimes of work in the last 15 years, and still this is showing up in my body. So I'm gonna just give some answers that are general and maybe use some of the examples from my experience. But the first piece of why these things repeat, like, hey, I've been doing this work, oh, and there's that trigger again, ouch, is because we don't just get to transmute the trigger once, right? How it works is we get triggered. Oh, then we see, okay, what's happening, where we're getting triggered. We do the work. We don't just have it happen once, but there's several times that it happens, because it's not like you just transmute it once, boom, done, next trigger. It's really about, like, we are given the opportunity to embody, not just know, oh, I know that trigger, I know what I'm supposed to do in this point. We get the opportunity to embody the way of being in a state of resilience and groundedness and stabilization in our inner vortex, as my amazing teacher Lore calls it. We get the opportunity over and over again to stabilize our inner vortex with the same trigger. And once that trigger has no hold on us, then we're truly free, right? So if it's person around relationship or loneliness, for instance, if that keeps showing up and showing up, you're not doing anything bad or wrong. If it keeps showing up, you're being given another opportunity to embody the actual knowing of what it is to know that you are not alone. You are being given the opportunity to know, to truly embody the truth that you are not separate, that you are connected to spirit. That's the opportunity. And for some people, it may be more repetitions of the trigger than others. And why is that? From my understanding, it's that we each have different amounts of stored pattern energy. That's the word that my teacher Zachariah uses to kind of, another word for karma. So each of us carries stored pattern energy. It's just energy that's stored and it's in a pattern, right? These karmic loops. And some of us have soul contracts that require us to go in deeper layers of these wounds. And some of us don't. So some of us are like, I was lonely too, and then I just did therapy and I was fine after a month. Great, that's wonderful. That person may have cleared that trigger. That person may not truly have cleared that trigger, and it will show up later. That's not our business. Our business is if it keeps showing up, for us to know that we are being given opportunities each time to truly embody, because once it has no hold on us, then we are truly free. And we also have different amounts of stored pattern energy. We have different amounts of karma that we carry. Karma is not what people think it is. People think I did something bad in that life and I'm being punished. That's not karma. Karma is what we didn't process, what emotion we didn't get to process or resolve in these other lifetimes. And that energy, and it's not just ours, could be our ancestors or collective, we process until we've met the depths of those layers. And for those of us who are very empathic, sensitive light workers, we are asked to transmute a shitload of stored pattern energy, a shitload of karmic energy, a shitload of this. So it's not an easy job. And we were given the assignment because we're brave, because we're powerful, because we are badass. So bravo to us. Okay, second, why is this thing happening over and over, right? So one of the other answers, and again, I'm not claiming to know, I'm just offering my experience, right? I never claimed to know the answers to anything. But the second is that, for instance, I had this come up last week. The same trauma from one of my core wounds when I was a baby. I had a very violent trauma when I was 6 weeks old. And that keeps coming up. It keeps showing up in these circumstances of terror, and it usually manifests in my body in physical illness and disease. And I get encephalitis and brain inflammation, and I can barely see, and I can't walk. And it's pretty horrific, but I'm used to it. It happens a lot. And it's exhausting, but I have learned to deeply surrender and open. And it happened so profoundly again in the last 10 days. It hit me so hard, and I was just done. Like, I was beyond my capacity for functioning. I could barely function physically, and the trauma was also underlying on top of it. And I'm like, what? I've done so much work on this. How? But I had the perfect opportunity last Monday to work through another layer of this wound, of this trauma, of this karma, because even though the trauma happened in this lifetime, it's still stored pattern energy from other lifetimes, meaning the core wound of fear or terror for me, or being violated, is from other lifetimes, and it didn't get cleared. So it showed up, and I didn't do anything bad or wrong to get it. I am brave and courageous enough to finally transmute it. Like, I came here to finally transmute it, but finally transmuting it is layers, and it can be exhausting, and it's up and down. So one of the other reasons why these come and show themselves again is that it's just more layers of the unconscious parts of you coming to be seen and made conscious, right? That's what healing is. That's what transmutation is. That's what ascension is. That's what all of this work that we're doing on the planet right now is. So we are getting, sorry, I'm still pretty dizzy from all the symptoms last week, so I'm like trying to ground myself. Whew. So the unconscious, there are still unconscious parts that need to be made conscious. That's all that's happening. Like last week I was crying and I was like, I'm a failure. I keep doing the same work on the same trauma and I'm so done. I'm not a failure, and you're not a failure. All that's happening is that more unconscious layers are coming to be made conscious. They were not able to be made conscious even 2 weeks ago for me, because I wasn't the same person I was 2 weeks ago that I am now, right? 2 years ago, I wasn't able to hit this layer of this core wound of trauma because I'm not the same person I am now. Every day I continue to build my resilience, my capacity. I continue to stabilize my inner vortex, as my teacher, Lord Fierkenstedt, taught me. So the more that I do that, the more my inner child and that trauma is like, damn, this girl is fucking on board and she is strong, and now we can make her aware of this other layer of trauma. Boom! That it looks like a shit show, right? Explosion. That's all that's happening. You're not doing anything bad or wrong, and you now have the opportunity, when the subconscious gets conscious, to see it, and you may lose your shit. I totally fucking lost my shit, and I am like the queen of surrendering while I've got vertigo, encephalitis, nausea, nerve pain, excruciating pain. I can barely walk. I am the queen now, after 20 years of this illness stuff, to just be like, okay, I'm just gonna lay here through it and just watch it like a movie. I did that 2 weeks ago. Then what happens? This trauma, this triggering experience, and boom, I just beep. And I was like, oh, I just went back in time 10 years ago, right? But I'm not going back in time 10 years ago. I'm a different person now, and I'm simply getting access to deeper layers, to that more unconscious part. And that more unconscious part is way more scary. Hence, it's gonna throw me off more. It's gonna make me perhaps behave in ways that I did 10 or 15 years ago. And I'm like, why am I doing that? I'm 2020 Mona, and I'm awesome. / sometimes I lose my shit, right? And so that last week was the / sometimes I lose my shit, and it's okay. It happens to all of us. And anyone who tells you it doesn't happen to is not telling the truth, unless they're the Buddha. And I don't really know anybody who is the Buddha right now in human form. So, I mean, many of us are on the path of being an ascended master, but like we're still human, right? So point being, that's one of the other reasons. The second reason, this unconscious wants to be made conscious, a different layer. And you just didn't have access to it because you weren't as badass. So now when something happens like that, I wish there was like a reminder bell that could come on your phone saying, ding, 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 shit's going crazy. Oh, same trigger. You are badass and you are hitting a deeper layer. It's a deeper layer of the onion. And the onion will eventually resolve. The nature of the onion and the nature of trauma is that it feels like it will never resolve, but it will. It will, and you will become free. Okay, third piece, last answer to this question of why does this trigger or this core wound keep repeating itself in different manifestations on the outside, right? This one I got from my teacher, Zachariah, and I love this one. Okay, how he puts it is, life loves you so, my paper, 1 second. Life loves you so much. Life loves you so much that it is willing to repeatedly just like hammer you with the same thing over and over. And it is willing and going to nail your feet to the ground until you see with clarity this pattern, that this pattern is holding you hostage, right? Until you see with the utmost clarity in your eyes that this pattern, this trauma, this trigger, this wound, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a trauma, but addiction, whatever it is holding you hostage. And until you see with deep clarity that you are in a cage, until you see that you can set yourself free. And so it's not like we're not aware of our patterns. It's not like I'm not aware of all the patterns underneath my chronic health stuff. But again, I have a soul contract that's different than your soul contract, which may be why you don't experience health stuff. That said, I still have the opportunity and am being required to face whatever is underneath that health stuff so that I can transmute it, even if it looks impossible, because it does look impossible. If I logically explain it to someone, that sounds impossible, but it's not. Nothing is impossible. When we have faith in things that we can't see, right? That's what faith is, like belief in something that we can't see. So God, Spirit, the universe, life loves you so much that she's going to repeat until you see with this deep clarity the truth of what's going on underneath that. And sometimes there's nothing, again, there's no bad or wrong, like you've been doing a bad job at resolving your trauma or your addictions or your patterns. There is no shame, because shame is the underlying root of trauma. Shame is the underlying root of addiction. So like we don't want to perpetuate this notion that we're doing something bad. Instead, we want to be like, oh, I didn't see that before, and now I see that. Or it wasn't time. It just simply wasn't time to transmute this level. We go in layers. That's what we're here for. Like, life is not about the end destination. It's about the entire journey. It's about this whole journey. So if I just like transmuted all my traumas like that, I'm like, oh my God, now I have this one and this one and this one. And I'm like, when does it end? You know, I ask myself that sometimes. So that's not the point of being here. The point is to embrace our humanity and to connect our divinity to our humanity in the center, the heaven and the earth in the center. So I love this answer that he gives about God, Spirit, life loving you so much that it's like forcing you to see any part of you, yourself, that is in consort with, Paul Selig talks about this in his book, The Book of Mastery, in consort with the idea that you're not free. So I'm in consort, for instance, with the idea that these things on the outside are affecting me and my health, because that's what I've been told, right? So how do I get out of consort with that? I would recommend reading The Book of Mastery by Paul Selig for that. But this idea, again, that God, Spirit, the universe is like, loves you so much that she wants you to be free. And for you to be free, you may have to go through very deep, painful initiations until you see or can get to the root of the truth underlying, which is only you have that key. Only you have that key to get out of that cage, out of that prison cell. And whatever that key is and whatever that freedom is different for each of us, right? For me, a lot of it has to do with sovereignty. A lot of it has to do with knowing the power that I have instead of putting it in others. A lot of it has to do with, there's so many different layers. So I hope that's helpful. These three kind of answers, it's not the best word, these three ideas of why things repeat, right? The first being, sorry, my brain is really foggy. The first thing being, we're being given multiple opportunities to transmute, and it doesn't just happen once and then we're done. We have various amounts of stored pattern energy and karmic histories, and that we are being given the opportunity to completely embody it. So once we're embodying it and it doesn't trigger us anymore, we can be free. The second being that there's just new layers of your subconscious that are wanting to be made conscious. And they couldn't be brought to your attention 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago because you were not the same person you were even 2 days ago or 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago. And the third is because life loves you so much that she wants you to be so free that she will show you the things that are standing in the way of your freedom by virtue of repeating these painful experiences until we can truly see and truly set ourselves out of the prison cage. Okay, thanks for listening if you made it this far. If you like these videos, love for you to go to the link and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.